Hello folks, welcome to my end of the year book tag. So I wanted to do a little sort of wrap up, or this is not a wrap up, but something that involves me going through a lot of the books that I've read throughout this whole year. In the past few years, I've done like tier ranking all the books I've read in a year, but I didn't really feel like going that route this year. So instead, we're going to just be doing the end of the year book tag. And I feel like this will be really fun because there's a lot of specific questions that will have me going through all of the books I read this year. So I'm very excited. Let's just jump into the tag. I also just love a good book tag, and I don't even think I've done a single one this year. So this will be exciting, all right? I have the questions here on my iPad. I'll also list them down below. Yeah, let's just get into it. Number 1 is most disappointing read of the year. And honestly, y'all, like I had a pretty solid reading year. Like I didn't read many bad books at all, which is fantastic. But the last book, the very last book I read of this year was the worst. And I hate to say it, but it's true. It's true. The worst book I read this year was The Christmas Swap. This book, you know, honestly, it's more appropriate if we call this the Christmas flop, because that was my personal experience. This book flopped for me. This basically has like the same exact premise as the one and only other Christmas book I read last year called Kiss Her Once for Me. It literally has the same exact premise, except it's so much less believable. Basically, like up until 50% of this book, one of the main love interests hates the other one, and like not in a way that is fun and cute. It was just very like questionable and like, when is this gonna end? And then once it did end, it was just so 0 to 100. It was so unbelievable to me. And I really like was having the experience of when you're reading a book and it starts feeling like a literal chore. But I pushed through and ended up being a 2-star, and this is my only 2-star of the year. Question number 2 is an underdog book of the year, and for this one I chose We Do What We Do in the Dark. I chose this as the underdog because I literally have never seen anyone talk about this ever. I don't know if that's just me, but I've never seen anyone talk about this book. And this book was so good. Like, this gives like sapphic Sally Rooney vibes. That's honestly like the best way I can describe it to someone who hasn't read it. And it's about these two women who form this relationship. One of them is a professor at like a college, and the other woman is her student, and the professor is also married. And so this relationship is like just so complicated. But I really love this book. It had so many good quotes, and I just love following really unconventional relationships like this. And so I just feel like it totally is the underdog of the year. This deserves to be talked about a lot more, and I honestly think like a lot of people would like this, especially the general public that likes these sort of like literary fiction books. Question number 3 is a book that is overhyped, and for this one I chose Milkfed. To me, this was overhyped because I feel like it didn't deliver on what it should have. Does that make sense? I feel like this book was predictable in a sense. Like, once you knew what was going on, it delivered in that sense. But the way in which it ended and it all came together in the end, I feel like wasn't good. And I personally heard so many good things about this book before reading it. There were definitely things that I really loved about this book, but it was one of those books that like went to both extremes, where there were things I absolutely loved and things I really did not. And I just don't think it fully delivered in the ways that it could have. I think there was a lot of lost potential when it came to this book. Number 4 is favorite book couples of the year, and I have 2 answers for this. So my first one right away is Iris and Stevie from Iris Kelly Doesn't Date. I literally don't think I loved like a book couple like this in so long. I just feel like these 2 characters as a couple were so wholesome, so good for each other, so healthy, and I really like both of them individually, and I feel like that really makes a good couple. And the other answer I have for this is Nina and Ari from For Her Consideration. I absolutely loved the couple in this book too. Like, it actually gets me a little giddy inside. I just think they were so good together, and it really kind of exemplified that feeling you have of like honestly, if you were ever to like start dating your celebrity crush and that's what this book is, but it like works out, like it works out perfectly. I just thought it was done so well. I thought they were so compatible, and I just love them together. They were so cute. Number 5 is favorite main characters of the year, and I have a few answers for this one too. I'm just too indecisive to choose just one. So the first one I have is Stevie from Iris Kelly Doesn't Date. I just loved Stevie. I thought she was like, she just came across as such a real person to me, and I loved that Stevie dealt with anxiety, and this book had amazing anxiety rep, and honestly she was just one of my favorite characters for that reason, because I feel like that was done so well in a way I've never seen it before. Another character I chose was Lucy from Pride and Prejudice and Pittsburgh. I love Lucy. Okay, there, I said it. I literally loved Lucy so much in this book. She's the character that this book like kind of does time travel, and she's the one from 1812. And I just thought she was such a little sweetheart. Like I just thought she was so adorable, so cute, so likable, and I just fell in love with her while reading. Another one I wanted to point out was Darcy. I think that's the character's name, Darcy, from No Exit. This was a character where, like, for me, I feel like when it comes to thrillers and mysteries and stuff like that, the characters aren't always like number one for me, whereas in like romances, like I really want to like the character, right? But in thrillers and stuff like that, it's kind of hit or miss for me. It's not like the most important part of the book for me, but I ended up caring about Darcy so much. Like I just was rooting for her so deeply, and I just learned to love her so much, and I remember that so specifically from that reading experience, so I had to put her in there. Another one I have to say, I didn't even write this one down, but now that I'm thinking about it, is Lily. I think her name's Lily, guys. I haven't read these books in like, who even knows, like 8 months or something, but Lily from The Kind Worth Killing, oh my god. This is like, this is one of those like unhinged women main characters that you just can't tear your eyes away from. Like she is so destructive, she's borderline insane, but I loved her and I was rooting for her, and like I was upset if anything bad was gonna happen to her, or like I seriously was on her side, and I don't care. I honestly love those kinds of main characters, so it was kind of right up my alley. Number 6 is a book that surprised you, and I took this one pretty literally. I chose The Collective for this prompt. I feel like this is one of the most surprising books I read this year. It was just one of the best books I read this year, to be completely honest. This was such a good thriller, and what happened at the end was so surprising and shocking to me. So it wasn't surprising in the sense that like maybe I thought I wouldn't like it and then I did. It was just generally such a shocking and surprising book, but that made it so amazing and all the better, and I just had to choose this one. Number 7 is a new favorite author you discovered in 2023, and for this one I chose Jennifer McMahon. I just recently read 3 of her books. I swear I go through like phases with like thriller and horror authors where once I read one of your books, I'm gonna read all of them. I've done this with multiple authors before, and she's the author of the year. I've read The Children on the Hill, The Invited, and The Drowning Kind just this last month, I'm pretty sure. And she is definitely a new favorite of mine. I absolutely love her writing and her writing style, and I'm pretty much gonna read anything and everything she puts out for the rest of her and my life. Number 8 is the happiest read of the year, and for this one I chose Pride and Prejudice and Pittsburgh. I was like not expecting to love this book as much as I did, and I chose this for happiest because this book truly had me like giddy, kicking my feet and giggling. I can't even explain. Like I read this in 2 days, so that actually should give you a picture. This was just so joyful to read. Like every moment of it was so exciting and happy, truly. It was just one of those books too where like I knew this author wasn't gonna let me down. I knew she was not going to fool me. Like we were gonna have a happy ending here, and that's exactly what happened. It had such a happy ending and it made me so happy. Number 9 is the most frustrating book you read in 2023, and for this one I chose The Dark Tide. Now this was the most frustrating for me because I really liked it. I liked it so much that I feel like it sort of failed itself and me, because this is another book where I feel like it had so much potential that it just did not live up to. And that was really frustrating as a reader because there were so many things that I was just like, if you literally just went in this direction, or if you just elaborated, this would have been so much more rich. And so that whole aspect of it was really frustrating. I feel like if you've read this, you know, because I honestly loved this book in a sense, but it didn't get like a 5-star from me because it didn't really reach where it could have gone. All right, number 10 is best adaptation of the year, and I actually didn't read any books where I watched an adaptation that I loved so much, but one that I could think of was Spy Family. I love the adaptation of Spy Family, especially the one on Crunchyroll, and they just came out with season 2 of the show this year, and I just started watching it pretty recently, and I just love it so much. I think it does such a good job of taking the text onto the screen, and I just love being able to hear the voice actors. That's probably one of the most exciting parts of it because I really feel like their voices bring it to life so much. Number 11 is the longest book I read this year, and the longest book I read was The Toll. This is the 3rd book in the Scythe series, and it was, let's see, 625 pages long. Yeah, honestly, like, I'm really proud of myself for reading a book this long this year, but this book definitely dragged. It definitely dragged on. It did not need to be 625 pages long. And then number 12, the shortest book I read this year, was the Avatar free comic book day comic. I honestly read like a bunch of these small little comics, so I expected something like this, and I believe this one was 22 pages long. Number 13 is favorite cover of the year, and I love this question. I literally love this question so much because I love judging books by their covers. I just can't help who I am inside. I just can't. And I've said this before and I'll say it again. Like, I'll judge a book by its cover, but I will read a book with a horrible cover, and honestly, those sometimes are the best books. But my favorite covers of the year, I've got to say, are Hell Followed With Us. Literally, look at this. This cover made me buy this, to be quite fucking honest. It really did. It really did. I mean, come on. Look at that. It's so stunning. It actually is just like so captivating. I can't look away from it. So this one is definitely one of them. Oh, I have to sneeze. Okay, I'm back from sneezing. As I was saying, what I especially love about this cover is that it actually really tells the story of what happens in this book before you even really know it, right? So I don't know, I just feel like it's so emblematic of the story inside, and I just love it so much. And the other book I chose for this prompt was Sorry Bro. This is just like one of the most beautiful romance covers I think I've ever seen in my damn life. Look how stunning and gorgeous this is. And this is another one where I feel like it totally exemplifies what's on the inside. And that's what I love so much about, like, to me, this is like a perfect book cover because it should not just be pretty. It should tell a story about what's on the inside before you pick it up. And this one totally does. Everything down to even just like the pomegranates are so, you know, symbolic of what's inside, what the story is about, and it is just so gorgeous. Number 14 is a book you haven't stopped thinking about, and I do have 2 answers for this one. First one I have right here, so I'll just show you. This is a manga called Goodbye. It's called Goodbye My Rose Garden. I've read the first and second one, and this is literally, I think, like one of the best manga series I've ever read in my whole life. It is just so well done. It's a romance manga kind of period piece. I have not stopped thinking about this since I read it. Like, every time I think, oh, let me pick up another manga, which is very, very frequently, I love reading manga, I always think about her. I'm always thinking about her. But the next one is The Kind Worth Killing, which I already touched upon. But this one, to kind of give you an idea of how, like, I felt with the main character here. To me, this main character gives, like, every year, I need a few books that are in the good for her category. I just need one of those books to be like, you know, that to land in my lap at least once a year. And The Kind Worth Killing was certainly that kind of book this year for me, and that just made me love it all the more. I just loved it so much. What's honestly so disappointing and heartbreaking is just as I read that book, the second book came out, The Kind Worth Saving, and I went to go read that, and it literally doesn't even follow the main character that we followed in the first book, which is the whole reason that I liked the first book. What are we doing here? what is going on? It actually frustrates me to no end. But yeah, that book I have not stopped thinking about. Like, I want to read another book that makes me feel that way again. All right, question 15 is the cringiest book you read this year. And I'm gonna be honest, I kind of reject this question because I don't subscribe in believing to cringe. Number 16 is an unpopular book that you love. And honestly, I didn't have like a really solid answer for this. The one thing I came up with was the manga series Bloom Into You. I ended up reading this whole series. I think there were 8 volumes. I read all of them. I literally loved this series so much, and it was one at first that I was so not going to read because I was reading the reviews and they were mixed, and there were a lot of negative reviews, but I ended up reading it anyway. And I loved it. I loved it so much, and I kind of can understand why someone wouldn't like it at the same time, but I liked it. And I also feel like it's one of those series that really develops within time. So if you read the first one only and then you don't keep going, I feel like it's kind of valid to not like parts of it. Question number 17 is, what was your highest and lowest rated book on Goodreads, and do you agree with that? And for the lowest rated, mine was The Christmas Swap, which, yes, I fully agree with this because this was my lowest rated book of the year. That's really self-explanatory to me. And the highest rated was The Kind Worth Killing. Can you even believe that? And I agree with that fully as well. I gave that book 5 stars. I loved it. Question number 18 is favorite quotes of the year. And I'm sorry, y'all, but I have to skip this because we could just be here for actual hours. I don't even know how to go about that. Like, there are seriously so many. Maybe I'll just choose one of the books that are on the floor. Read you a quote. You know what? This is what we're gonna do. I'm gonna read you a quote from We Do What We Do in the Dark and from Milk Fed to redeem itself. I'll let it redeem itself because there are some great quotes in this. Okay, this is just a random one. There's so many amazing quotes in this, but I'm just gonna read this short one. It goes, "She felt awful around other people. In a crowd, or even with just one other person. She would become convinced she was not capable of enjoying things to the same degree that everyone else seemed to enjoy them. It was as if she was constantly being told a funny joke, and while some part of her felt she should laugh, her body and mouth couldn't produce the laugh itself." Yeah, what an amazing quote. I feel like that's like a feeling a lot of us really have deep down inside of us. And this author put it into words. And let's see, I'm telling you, Milk Fed will redeem itself right now because there are some amazing quotes in this book. If anything, I actually think the writing style of this book was probably one of my favorite parts of it. Okay, I'm gonna read you these like 2 quotes I think kind of go hand in hand, and you're gonna fall in love and you're gonna want to read this. Watch. So the first one goes, "I had never imagined this kind of warmth could be so safe, abundant. I'd spent so much time cutting and carving away at myself, worshipping cold. I feared that light and warmth were a trick, a tease, false offerings that lured you into relaxing, and just when you made yourself vulnerable, they would be seized. Better to adapt to the cold. Better to thrust the cold on oneself. Be prepared." And then the second one goes, "I thought of all the parts of the stew as I ate it. The carrots, the onions, the beef, the gravy. I imagined the vegetables growing in the ground. I imagined the cows grazing. Each element was nourishing in its own right, but even juicier and better when they came together as a whole. It was meant to be savored. Life could be savored. I was surprised to think for a moment that if there was a God, this could be God's wish for us." Like, are we joking? Like, is that a joke right now? So number 19 is a book with the most unique concept. And so I chose 2 for this. The first one I chose was Scythe. So, I mean, come on. If you don't know what Scythe is about, you're about to be shook. Scythe is basically set in this world where there's no hunger, no disease, no war. Basically, everything's perfect and everyone's pretty much immortal. And Scythes basically hold this role in society where they're the ones who take the lives of people because it doesn't happen naturally anymore. And they still need to have this sort of like population control. And so the whole idea of this book is, I think, so unique and so fascinating. And what's really interesting about this book is that you're actually following these teenagers as they're about to enter the scythedom and become scythes, and what that's like for them and their family, and how they're gonna have to like basically leave their whole life as they knew it behind. And so the concept of this book I think is just so extremely unique and interesting. And then the second book I chose for this was Big Swiss. I wish I loved this book as much as I loved the concept of this book so much, because in this book you're basically following this woman who is transcribing sex therapy sessions. Like, her boss is the therapist and she's just transcribing the sessions for them. And while she's transcribing the sessions, she ends up becoming infatuated with one of the clients. And as she becomes infatuated with one of the clients, she basically starts a relationship with her. And I mean, do I even have to tell you anything else? Like, that concept is so interesting, so fascinating, and could have gone so well. I just don't think that it did. I do think that this book was really compelling and really interesting and weird and fun. I think I read this book in 2 days. Like, I really wanted to keep reading this. But at the end of the day, I just don't really think it reached its full potential. But I do think the initial concept of it is so unique and so fascinating. All right, and question 20 is a book that you would reread. Honestly, there's a lot of answers for this one, but I chose The Midnight Lie. I chose this one because I read this really early in the year and I loved this. I think this was probably my first favorite book of the year, and I just loved this so much. I was like genuinely infatuated with this story, these characters, the fantasy elements. So I would 100% read this again because I feel like there's a lot of it that I forgot about. Question 21 is your reading goal reflection and your goals going into the new year. I feel good that I've reached my reading goal. I read 101 books and my goal was 100. However, I do wish that I read more actual full-length novels, because honestly, I think probably about half of that is graphic novels and manga, which is still great. I'm glad I've read so much this year nonetheless, but I do just kind of wish that I got more full-length novels in that goal. And going forward this year, I think I'm just gonna have the same reading goal of 100 books. I think that's a pretty solid goal. Number 22, the last question is, after this year, what are you gonna prioritize going into 2024? And I think for me, I really want to prioritize reading books that I think are going to be like my favorite books of all time. I really want to read more fantasy this year, because every time I get into a fantasy mood and I'm reading fantasy book after fantasy book, every single one of them is like my new favorite book of all time. Seriously, I love fantasy so much and I don't read enough of it. So I definitely want to read more fantasy. I also really want to read more nonfiction. That has been like a goal every single year. I always want to be reading more nonfiction, so hopefully I can stick to that this year. But I really want to read books that I feel like are gonna be 5 stars, because I read a lot of good books this year, but I read a lot of like ones that kind of just landed in the middle for me. And I really think I want to try also reading more new releases this year. I've never been a big new release reader, but I really want to try and prioritize that a little more this year as well. But yeah, so I really want to just prioritize reading good books this year. I am dedicated. I really am. Especially, I really want to read books that I've been wanting to read for a long time this year. Like popular books I've been wanting to read for a really long time. Like, one of the first things I can think of, I don't know why this is the first one that popped into my head, but the Poppy War series. That is such a popular series I've been wanting to read for so long. Or honestly, anything by R.F. Kuang, or the Jasmine Throne series. Like, that is gonna be some of my first books I read this year. I'm telling you that now. So yeah, those are all the questions for this end of the year book tag. I hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know what you thought, if you agree or disagree with any of my findings in this video. So yeah, that's going to be it from me today. I'm not sure if I'm going to do another sort of end of the year video where I talk about all of the books I've read. If you'd like something like that, let me know, and I definitely will feel a little more encouraged to do something like that, because I definitely didn't go through all of them. Just so you know. But yeah, that is everything for today's video. I'll see you very soon in my next one. Bye, friends.